The showroom gleamed with polished metal and spotless glass, every reflection sharper than pride itself. The morning sun bounced off the hoods of luxury cars, lined in perfect rows, waiting for customers who could afford to touch them. Inside, a group of salesmen stood near the counter, laughing over coffee, watching the door open and close with every visitor. They wore suits that matched their smiles, slick and practiced. Then he walked in, a man in worn boots, a faded jacket and a cap pulled low. Over his eyes, his clothes were coated in dust from the road, and his hands looked like they had seen more work than rest. He paused by the door, glancing around, uncertain for a moment, before walking toward the desk. The laughter among the salesmen grew softer, but their smirks didn't fade. One of them stepped forward with forced politeness. "May I help you, sir?" The man nodded quietly. "I'd like to see your Mercedes trucks, please." The salesman's brows shot up. "Sir, these are commercial vehicles, not rentals. Maybe you're looking for our used lot across the street." The ragged man shook his head. "No, I'm in the right place. I want to buy 5 trucks for my company." The room fell silent before erupting in quiet snickers. Another salesman whispered, "5 trucks, I doubt he can buy one." The first one forced a laugh and said, "Sir, these trucks start at 100,000 each. You understand that, right?" The man looked at him calmly. "I understand very well. I just need someone who'll take me seriously." The salesman's tone turned sharp. "Sir, please don't waste our time. We have clients waiting who can actually afford what we sell." The man didn't argue. He simply nodded, turned toward the door and left. The manager, who had been watching from his office window, called out, "Let him go, he's just another drifter wasting time." An hour later, a black limousine pulled into the dealership. The driver stepped out and walked straight to the manager. "Sir, my employer wants to finalize a purchase of 5 Mercedes trucks." The manager frowned. "Excuse me, who's your employer?" The driver handed him a card with embossed gold letters. It read, "Hassan Logistics Worldwide." The manager's expression shifted instantly. Hassan was one of the largest private transport companies in the region. The driver continued, "He came earlier but was treated poorly. He asked me to deliver his business elsewhere unless someone's willing to apologize." The color drained from the manager's face. He rushed outside, scanning the street, hoping to see the man still nearby. But the road was empty except for dust swirling in the sunlight. That afternoon, the same company bought their trucks from a rival dealership down the road, paying in full. The rival's staff said the ragged man arrived, personally shook hands with every mechanic, and left generous bonuses for the workers. By evening, word spread across the industry. The story of the ragged man who could buy 5 Mercedes trucks became a quiet legend whispered among car dealers and sales teams across the city. The salesmen who had laughed that morning were called into the office one by one for a talk days. Later, the manager received a handwritten letter delivered by courier. It read, "People don't always wear their worth on their sleeves. Learn to look beyond dust because sometimes it hides diamonds," signed Hassan. From that day, the dealership changed its policy completely. Every visitor, whether rich or poor, was greeted with the same respect, no matter how they looked. The staff never forgot the lesson carved deep into their pride by one man who asked for 5 trucks and left with something far greater, their humility. A few weeks passed after the incident, but the sting of humiliation still hung heavy in the air at the dealership. The laughter that once filled the showroom had vanished, replaced by an uneasy silence. Every time a stranger walked in dressed in plain clothes, the salesman straightened, nervously remembering the ragged man who had walked out and changed everything. The manager had rewritten every rule since that day. Every employee was required to greet each visitor with equal courtesy, no matter how they looked. He even hung a sign at the entrance that read, "Every hand deserves a handshake," but rules could not erase shame. The salesmen who had mocked the man replayed that moment in their minds again and again, haunted by what they had lost. Not just money, but dignity. One morning, as the staff gathered for a routine meeting, a familiar sound broke the quiet, the heavy rumble of truck engines. The salesman turned to the windows and froze. 5 brand-new Mercedes trucks rolled into the parking lot. Their engines purred like lions in unison. A chauffeur stepped out and opened the door of the lead truck. Out stepped the same man wearing a crisp tailored jacket over the same old shirt and boots. His calm gaze met theirs, and silence swept through the showroom. The manager rushed forward, his voice trembling. "Mr. Hassan, welcome back, sir. We owe you a deep apology." The man smiled faintly. "I'm not here for apologies. I came to show you what respect looks like when it's practiced, not spoken." The salesman exchanged confused glances. He gestured toward the trucks. Each one was freshly painted with the logo Hassan Logistics, and below it the slogan written in bold black letters, "Look beyond appearances." The manager swallowed hard. "You really taught us a lesson, sir." The man nodded. "Lessons only matter if they change. Behavior. That's why I'm here again, not to humiliate you, but to give you a chance." He pulled out a file from his briefcase. "I'm expanding my company. I'll need 20 more trucks over the next few years. But I won't buy them if you treat people like price tags." The manager's eyes widened and he said quickly, "Sir, you'll be treated like family." The man's voice stayed steady. "Then treat everyone who walks through those doors the same way you treat me. That's how you'll earn respect, not just money." Before he left, he turned once more toward the salesman who had laughed at him the first day. His gaze was not angry, only calm. When you meet someone who looks poor, remember that you're only seeing one page of their story, never the whole book. He nodded politely and walked out. From that day, the dealership transformed completely. Customers who had once avoided the place began returning. Word spread that it was the most respectful and honest showroom in the city. Salesmen, who had once competed for commissions, now competed to offer help to those who looked like they had none. Years later, a framed photo hung in the dealership lobby. It showed the man standing beside his first 5 trucks beneath the company's slogan, "Look beyond appearances." Every morning, the staff passed that photo before starting work, and every evening they turned off the lights under its quiet reminder. The dealership grew wealthier than ever, not because of profit, but because it had finally learned the secret of business and life itself, that respect is worth more than any sale. Years passed, and the story of the ragged man became a legend, not just in that dealership, but across the entire automobile industry. New employees heard it during their first week of training. The instructor always ended the tale with the same line: "Never assume a man's worth by the dust on his shoes." The story spread so far that journalists began calling it the 5-truck lesson. Meanwhile, the dealership flourished. Business doubled, then tripled, not because of fancy advertisements, but because people trusted them. They were now known for integrity, a rare reputation in a world driven by appearances and profit. The new clients who walked in were not always wealthy. Many were workers, dreamers, small business owners, yet all of them were treated like kings. One rainy afternoon, the manager who had once dismissed the ragged man received an invitation on embossed paper. It was from Hassan Logistics. The company was celebrating its 10th anniversary, and the invitation bore his name personally, handwritten. He hesitated before opening it. Inside were simple words. 10 years ago, respect cost you 5 trucks. Today, it could earn you a lifetime of gratitude. You're invited to see what you helped build. The following week, he arrived at a massive shipping yard on the city's outskirts. Stretching before him was a fleet of gleaming trucks, lined in perfect rows, each painted with the same logo, Hassan Logistics, and underneath in silver letters, "Look beyond appearances." The man himself stood near the entrance, shaking hands with workers in orange vests, laughing freely, as if he had never been insulted a day in his life. When the manager approached nervously, Hassan smiled warmly, as if greeting an old friend. "Mr. Grant, you came." He nodded, his voice soft. "I had to. I've owed you a thank you." Hassan looked puzzled. "A thank you?" Grant said quietly. "That day you walked out, I realized what kind of person I had become. The arrogance, the prejudice, it ruined more than business. It ruined people's faith in me. You didn't just teach me to respect customers, you reminded me to respect humanity." Hassan listened quietly, then said with a kind smile, "Maybe that means we both won. You learned humility, and I learned patience." He guided him through the yard, showing him how his business had grown from 5 trucks to over 100 all across the country. Every driver was treated like family. Hassan introduced them with pride, saying, "Each of these men reminds me of who I used to be. A man people looked at, but never really saw at the end of the tour." Hassan stopped beside the first truck he had ever bought, still polished and well kept. He said softly, "I kept this one as a reminder of that day. The day I learned that being underestimated is sometimes life's best disguise." The manager smiled through tears and said, "You changed my life." Hassan shook his hand. "No, Mr. Grant, you changed your own. I just gave you the chance before leaving." The manager asked, "Why did you invite me?" Hassan looked toward his fleet and said, "Because I wanted you to see that respect builds empires faster than money ever can." Years later, when Hassan retired, he handed control of his company to his son, along with one instruction: never forget the day 5 trucks. Taught your father the value of character, not wealth. The old dealership still displayed a framed letter from him with a single sentence written in bold ink: "Look beyond appearances, because every man deserves to be seen before he's judged." And so the lesson lived on, whispered in offices, classrooms, and dinner tables. A story about how one ragged man changed not just a company, but the hearts of everyone who learned that humility, not power, leaves the longest mark on the world. Years later, Hassan's story had become the kind of tale that fathers told their sons and teachers shared with students when they wanted to explain what dignity meant. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about seeing people, about choosing respect. Before judgment, every truck from Hassan Logistics carried the same words across its side panels: look beyond appearances, and drivers took pride, knowing their work carried a message. Not just goods. Hassan grew older, but never prouder. He never wore the arrogance that wealth sometimes brings. He still visited his truck yard every morning, walking among workers, greeting them by name, bringing tea to the mechanics and asking about their families. The men who worked for him said that whenever Hassan arrived, the whole place felt lighter, as if the air itself respected him. Back one morning, while standing near the main gate, he noticed a young man sitting by the wall, dusty and nervous, clutching a small folder. Hassan walked over, smiling. "You waiting for someone?" The boy stood quickly, bowing slightly. "Sir, I came to apply for a driver's job, but I don't think I belong here." Everyone inside laughed at me for showing up in old shoes. Hassan studied him quietly before asking, "What's in the folder?" The boy opened it, revealing his driving license, a few certificates, and a photograph of his mother. Hassan looked at the picture and said softly, "Is she proud of you?" The boy nodded. "Yes, sir. I think she would be if I found work." Hassan handed the folder back and said, "Then let's make sure she stays proud. Come with me." He took the young man inside, ignoring the curious stares from office staff. He brought him straight to the HR desk and said, "Hire him." The clerk blinked. "Sir, we haven't tested him." Hassan smiled. "You just did. He showed up when others wouldn't. That's the only test that matters." Months later, that same young man became one of the best drivers in the company. Hassan often saw him washing his truck after long routes, humming under his breath. One day the boy approached him shyly and said, "Sir, you changed my life." Hassan chuckled, shaking his head. "No, son. I just remembered the day someone gave me a chance when I looked like you." The boy frowned. Confused, Sir Hassan placed a hand on his shoulder. "I was once the man nobody believed could buy 5 Mercedes trucks." The boy's eyes widened. "That was you." Hassan smiled quietly. "That was me." When the boy left the office, he repeated those words to everyone who would listen. Within days, the story spread again, but this time among a new generation of workers. For them, Hassan wasn't just their boss. He was proof that goodness could live inside success, that kindness could wear the same suit as power. Years later, when Hassan passed away, the entire fleet of trucks lined the highway for his final journey. Each vehicle's headlights glowed through the dawn like a river of light. The first truck carried a banner across its front: "Look beyond appearances, for that is where true worth hides." After his funeral, the company continued under the same principles, led by the very boy he once hired. The new sign outside the headquarters read, "In honor of the man who built his empire from respect, not riches." Every time one of those silver trucks drove down the road, people remembered him not as a billionaire, not as a businessman, but as the ragged man who once walked into a showroom and reminded the world that greatness often arrives wearing dust instead of gold.